Hello everybody. Today we're going to look at fractions in this video, and we're going to start with our first part of the topic, which is to be able to name, identify, order and compare different fractions. In summary, we're going to look at the fact that a fraction is a number which can be made of equal parts of a whole number. Fractions are made up with the top number, which is called a numerator, a bottom number, which is called a denominator, and a line between them. Fractions where the numerator is less than the denominator are called proper fractions. Fractions where the numerator is more than the denominator are called improper fractions. And numbers which are made up of a whole number and a fraction are called mixed numbers or mixed numerals. And we will see what these terms mean in the following slides. So if we look at this diagram over here on the right hand side, we can see that some of it is shaded and some of it is not. If we first of all start by looking at how many pieces the shape has been cut up into, we might see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 pieces. So the number of pieces that the shape is cut up into gives us our denominator, the number at the bottom. So this fraction would be something over the value 5 pieces in total. If we were then talking about how many of those pieces were shaded, we would look at them and we would see there is 1, 2 pieces and then a third piece here. So 3 pieces would be our numerator, the number at the top. So we would be able to say that this fraction, or the fraction of this shape that is shaded, is 3 out of 5 pieces. If we then instead now look at this number line in the center here, we can see that the dot that has been shown here is in the middle between the 0 on the left hand side and the 1. It is in the exact middle position, equally distant from 0 and 1. So we could say it is at the halfway point, halfway between the two. So these are examples of some fractions, basically when we divide something up into parts. So again, what are those parts of a fraction that we heard about at the start? Very simply, again, the number at the top is our numerator. It's how many pieces we have in what we're talking about. The number at the bottom is our denominator, which tells us how many parts make up a whole. So what's the full number? So again, any number that we want to represent can be represented as a fraction. A numerator, so how many parts we have, a denominator, how many parts are in the whole, and the line between them. Just for your information, sometimes we might also see this as written 4 over 5, like that, so the line may not always be exactly horizontal. Some books and resources might show it in this sort of format, but you'll still see that all the parts of the fraction are there. When we put this into words, or when we write it out, again down the bottom here, it's got some examples of how it might be said. So this same fraction could be 4 on 5. So we think about 4 on top of 5, if you like. 4 over 5. So again, the 4 is over the top of the 5. 4 out of 5. So again, 4 pieces out of the 5 available. Or we might just say 4/5. So 4 of the 5 parts. So there are lots of ways that you can say the fraction, and there's also, as we've just shown, a few ways that it's commonly written. So here we're going to look at some new terms: improper fractions and mixed numbers. So whenever we have a fraction with a numerator that is smaller than the denominator, we can say that that is a proper fraction. Okay, the numerator, so the number at the top, has to be smaller than the denominator. If we have a fraction where the numerator is larger than the denominator, we will call that an improper fraction. Okay, so the numerator has to be bigger than the number on the bottom, the denominator. So we can look at this diagram in the middle where we have 2 rows. Each row has been divided into 5 pieces. Okay, so we could say at the top that we have 5 out of 5 pieces, or 5 on 5. And we could say at the bottom we have 3 on 5 pieces. We could say we had 8 on 5 pieces, so 8 out of 5. But we could also talk about something called a mixed number or a mixed numeral, where we have a whole number component and a fraction. And the whole number component is worked out by how many groups of our denominator we have in our numerator. So how many lots of 5 do we have in 8 at the moment? So 5's into 8, we would have 1, and what would be left over? Well, 8 take away 5 would give us 3, so that becomes our new numerator, but it's still over 5. Okay, so we've got one whole number here, one whole set of 5, so that's the same as saying 5 over 5, and then we've also got, or plus, another 3 over 5. If you have a look at it, if we added up those numerators, we get back to that 8 over 5. So a mixed number or a mixed numeral is where we have a whole number component. So we've gone past the denominator amount, and we then still have some fraction. Now, we often need to compare fractions. Sometimes it's really obvious and sometimes it's less so. So in the first example here, which of these fractions, 3 out of 8 and 5 out of 8, or 3 over 8 and 5 over 8, which one is bigger? So one way you can do this is to create what's called a visual model, which is these things over here, where you basically draw some sort of diagram, divide it up into the amounts it says, and then you can visually see which one's bigger. So by looking at this, the 3 out of 8, which is this one here at the top, is certainly got less boxes shaded than the one on the bottom. Okay, so we would certainly say the 5 out of 8 is bigger than the 3 out of 8. So another thing we can see about that, hopefully, is we look at the fractions themselves, and the denominator in both of these is 8. So the denominator is the same. So if the denominators are the same, we can just look at the numerator to work out which is bigger or smaller. So if we assume that they're both out of 8, so the denominators are the same, it's very clear to see that the 5 is bigger than the 3. The 5 numerator is bigger than the 3 numerator, so therefore the 5 would have to be bigger. And that works again because the denominators, the amount that the object is cut up into, is the same. And that's what this big highlighted section in the middle says, that for fractions with the same denominator, we can compare their size by looking at the numerator. What about if that's not true? What about in the second case where we have two fractions, 4 over 6 and 4 over 10? So again, these ones do not have the same denominator. The first denominator is a 6 and the second denominator is a 10. So they're not the same. Let's draw a diagram, okay, and make sure we can see it visually. So we start by drawing the two diagrams. Most importantly, the overall shape is the same size. The top one we then divide into 6 pieces, the bottom one into 10 equal pieces, colour them in, and we can clearly now see that 4 over 6 has more coloured in than 4 over 10, okay? And again, there's a bit of a rule that we can go by. So if the numerators are the same, and in this case the numerators, the number at the top, are both 4, then we can use the denominator to compare them. So the numerator is the same in both of these. So the one with least cuts, so the one with the smallest number, will be bigger than one that's divided into a bigger amount. So 4 over 6 is going to be bigger than 4 over 10 because the 6 is a smaller number, therefore there are less pieces that it's being cut into. So where fractions with the same numerator, we can compare their size by looking at the denominator. The smaller the denominator, the bigger the fraction will be in this case. So these are two sort of rules, if you like, or guides that are very useful to know. Okay, we're now into math space, and at the bottom of the bottom of the notes, there is a set of 3 questions that you can have a look at. Okay, now we're in math space, and at the bottom of the lesson, there are 3 example questions you can have a look at. So if we have a look at the first one, it's a question of a style that asks you to interpret a picture. So what fraction of the hexagon below is shaded? So what you'll be looking for is how many pieces it's been divided into. Being a hexagon, that means it's 6 pieces. And then how many pieces are shaded. And in this case, it's 5. So we would have an answer of 5 over 6, so a numerator of 5 and a denominator of 6. Again, there is a video that you can watch where the instructor from MathSpace will go through how to do this sort of question if you like. Question 2 is about interpreting a number line. So we need to give our answer in this case as a mixed number. So we're looking for something that may have a whole number and a fraction. But we can see on the left that we have a 3, and we can see on the right we have a 4. So we have the 3. Our little marker is on the 9th position out of 10. Okay, so we have all of the 3 leading up to this, and we have 9 out of the 10 spaces. So our mixed number here would be 3, and then next to that, 9 over 10. And the last question here is about inequality. So it's asking us to compare two fractions. We have 1 over 5 and 1 over 6, and it's asking us to choose either a less than or a greater than symbol to put into the box. So if we look at those, we're really looking for one of two options. Are the numerators the same, or are the denominators the same? In this case, the numerators are the same. So if we think about that rule from earlier, if the numerators are the same, we can compare them by looking at the denominator. And in this case, whatever one has a smaller number for the denominator will be the bigger fraction because it's divided into less pieces. So 1 over 5 will be a bigger number than 1 over 6. So we'd be able to put the greater than symbol in that particular question. So those are 3 of the style of question that you will now have going forward. Again, you can watch the videos as you go through the questions. So the little question video icon will come up on the right hand side. You can do that. You can use the hint option if you need to. Just remember that hints do show up as being used, and while it's not a penalty, it would be a bad idea to just automatically choose the hints because it's going to show that you're not really trying very well. Use hints though as needed, and if need be, you can always come back to either this video or the notes as well, so you can reread something to make sure you've understood the topic. So that's it for this first topic. Have a go and see what you think.